Hey, so why do I work every day growing crops only to give them all to you, and I can't read and have not left the same square mile of land my entire life? Oh, well, that's easy. God said so. God said that? Indeed he did. He said I'm in charge. Why would God care if you're... And he said that if you question him, you're going to hell. I'm not questioning God, I'm questioning the current socioeconomic structure of our society. Well, God made our current whatever the fuck you just said, and he put me in charge of it. Stop asking questions, God hates those. Why did he bless me with the ability to reason if he didn't want me asking questions? Why did he give me the capacity for language if you won't give me the time I need to learn to read? Why did he create a massive and beautiful world if he wished for me to live and die in such a small part of it? Because he hates you. Now get back out there and harvest all my wheat that you grew on my land. God said I'm going to be able to buy a yacht this year. Feudalism, the divine right to rule. Monarchies. Oh, what a load of silliness. People back in the day sure were dumb. It took over 1,000 years for Europe to get over such silly notions. You see, it wasn't until America. No, sorry. The Enlightenment was a philosophical and political movement which we can mostly credit to the French, unfortunately. It was a movement with many great thinkers like Voltaire and René Descartes and Jean-Jacques Rousseau, and you can tell they're real smart guys because I can't pronounce their names. Although the greatest mind of the Enlightenment was, of course, Joseph Ignace Guillotin. These men, among many others, were the first to look around at the political structure of Europe that had existed almost unchanged since the fall of the Roman Empire, and they noticed that it fucking sucked and made no sense. They started saying some crazy shit. They started to say that the church and state should be separate, and that people had rights, and they were equal. They said that God gave us those rights. The people should choose their own form of government. You know, all that liberal bullshit. Those dumb fancy words those French fucks wrote would go on to alter the entire course of Western thought. Institutions once thought natural, and even virtuous, like the monarchy, slavery, and the church being intertwined with the law, were now called into question. And the answer to the question was, we probably shouldn't own people, kings are stupid, and the church shouldn't be allowed near a fucking playground, much less our legal system. Did you know they used to try animals in court? That was a big thing. And is it not true, Cluck Norris, if that is your real name, that upon the night the fox entered the henhouse, you were nowhere to be found? I find it quite the coincidence. Unless, of course, you and the fox were in cahoots. I've heard all I need to hear, you feathered felon. I sentence you to death by being burned at the stake. Can someone get the herbs and spices ready? Yes, feudal Europe was a circus. I know historians don't like using the term Dark Ages, but when you go from the glory of Rome to trying pigs in a court of law to curb stomping the entire world for centuries, well, maybe it's accurate. The Chinese call their low point in history the century of humiliation. So maybe we can start calling the Middle Ages, I don't know, the millennium of collecting L's or something. In case you were wondering, the animals sometimes got defense attorneys. But that's all boring Europe stuff. That place doesn't matter anymore. It's a peninsula of American puppet states with delusions of grandeur. Nice healthcare, losers. Did the Marshall Plan buy it for you? Yes, it was America that first took Enlightenment thought and put it into practice. The first nation on Earth founded on the idea that all men were created equal, except for the blacks. I mean, you know, the guys that signed that piece of paper that said all that shit, they did own people. That would become a problem later. They founded a nation on ideas they struggled to impose upon themselves. Those ideas, however, were fundamentally wrong. They rested upon the assumption of the equality of races. This was an error. It was a sandy foundation, and the government built upon it fell when the storm came and the wind blew. Our Confederate government is founded upon exactly the opposite idea. Its foundations are laid, its cornerstone rests upon the great truth that the Negro is not equal to the white man, that slavery, subordination to the superior race, is his natural and normal condition. This, our new government, is the first in the history of the world, based upon the great physical, philosophical, and moral truth. Did you notice that political cartoon I showed in the beginning? It's pretty anti-enlightenment. The American War for Independence, the French Reign of Terror and the Napoleonic Wars, the American Civil War, every goddamn American foreign intervention. The Enlightenment was a radical, dangerous, and violent school of thought which called for the destruction of basically all established institutions at the time. Sure, many of these conflicts were necessary and virtuous. Others were two-faced and really were motivated by materialistic matters, and yet others got, out of hand. But that's the price of freedom. The tree of liberty must be refreshed from time to time with the blood of patriots and tyrants. Heads gotta roll if you want to dismantle a socio-political system that had existed for 1,000 years. The point is, feudalism didn't make sense. It was filled with contradictions. God chose the king. They had a divine right to rule. Why does God care? He's probably busy. There's still lots of children that don't have leukemia yet. Furthermore, then why would God keep picking guys that look like this? That's fucking gross. If the Pope and the Holy Roman Emperor were both chosen by God, then why did they fucking hate each other all the time? And of course, converting people by force? That's not very Jesus of you, young man. I'm pretty sure when Jesus wanted to get more followers, he performed good deeds. He didn't sail to the other side of the world and start chopping hands off like a fucking lunatic. People lived and died for generation after generation, believing in the system that did not make sense. And of course, the true horror of the Middle Ages in Europe was all the violence perpetuated in the name of this madness. The Crusades, the wars after the Protestant Reformation, the Spanish Inquisition, and those pigs didn't need to die, you fucking monsters. Although I'm happy to report that in a bestiality case regarding a man that fucked a mule, the man was charged, and the mule was not, because the local community attested to the fact that the mule did not enjoy it. But of course, the Enlightenment has inspired a lot of violence too. The only difference is, you agree with the ideological underpinnings of the violence. You are aware people agreed with the Crusades, right? They believed they were as necessary and good as you believe the Civil War was necessary and good. We still use violence to spread and enforce our way of life all over the world. What has changed is what that way of life is. But why? What caused such a massive shift in behavior and culture? Well, for the purposes of this video, which is about the rootin' tootin' cowboy shoot yeehaw game, we can oversimplify this down to 3 main causes of the Enlightenment, according to most historians.
Welcome to Watch Mojo, and today we're going to be counting down the top 3 causes of the Age of Enlightenment. Number 1, the Protestant Reformation and all that shit that happened after. In 1517, a German nailed 95 reasons the Catholic Church sucks to adore, and it made everyone lose their minds. The Germans are, of course, historically, the little troublemaking rascals of Europe. This caused a lot of wars. Like, a lot of wars. Too many wars, some would say? But when they said that, we killed them too. This undermined the authority of the Catholic Church, would pave the way for religious freedom as a means of stopping violence. And, of course, it's pretty hard to think religion is creating a better world when I just stabbed you in the dick for thinking Jesus had brown hair and not blonde. Number 2, the scientific revolution. Certified virgins like Isaac Newton and some other guys who had sex and were therefore less worthy of our praise, developed and practiced a new method of understanding the natural world called the scientific method. The scientific method is that thing you do where you repeat what you saw on TV last night. This caused people to realize the natural world could be measured in objective ways and that the Bible was not the ultimate source of truth. Number 3, the church and kings sucked. They just sucked. People stopped liking them. Real dicks, those guys. Total hypocrites. This has been Watch Mojo. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss our next video on the top 5 reasons it didn't happen. But it should have happened, because they deserved it.
Sorry, I swear to God, I did not type that into the AI voice thing. It just said that.
Did George Soros pay you to type that, you fucking soy boy?
I know even for my standards I've been going on about this for a while. But what I need you to understand is, we live in exceptionally non-violent times, but it is a mistake to attribute that fact to the Enlightenment. Where our greatest conflicts were once religious, they are now ideological. There was a reckoning. The Enlightenment was a great change in how people looked at the world, and this change was brought about chiefly by fear. Fear that we'd been led astray in our search for truth and meaning by liars and hypocrites. Fear that instead of building a better future, we were just building a more brutal present.
So, how's your gang doing? They still believing in you? Better world. Pure world. How's that coming along?
Just fine.
We can't always fight nature.
Out here risking our necks, and for what exactly? For an idea that don't work no more.
We can't fight change. Can't fight gravity. We can't fight nothing. My whole life, all I ever did was fight. But I can't give up neither. I can't fight my own nature. That's a paradox, John. You see?
So Red Dead Redemption 2 is a gritty American reimagining of Robin Hood. I will not apologize. Red Dead Redemption 2 follows the story of the Vanderland Gang, a group of outlaws on the run from the law which also claims to adhere to, well, something of a code. Their leader, Dutch Vanderland, is a well-read gentleman outlaw. Yes, he reads books. He talks about love.
I'm sorry I wasted my life trying to teach you boys. Love you though I do. Well, leaving love aside, you think we got this?
Don't you never leave love aside, Arthur. It's all we got.
He protects the weak. He's not racist. He's violent, but so what? If you have a problem with Dutch because he's violent, then you should have a problem with the Allies in World War II, frankly. Because I don't know if you know this. The Allies killed people. Sort of a lot of them. Whether or not a war was just is rarely judged on how violent it was. But one action of Dutch is objectively evil, obviously.
You borrowed money from my business partner, Herr Strauss. You owe him, you took the money. He wants it back, what's not to understand?
Yes, loan sharking, truly despicable. And of course our protagonist, Arthur Morgan, a senior gun in the Vanderland Gang, catches tuberculosis from one of these men he's collecting the money back from. It is easy, from the outside looking in, to call Dutch a delusional hypocrite, justifying his own selfish acts with high-minded mumbo-jumbo, to which I ask, do you think that the Vanderland Gang, treating all men as born equal, doesn't embody American ideals better than America itself during the time in which the story takes place? I know that every fucking thing that's made now has to be about racism, but this is a very important aspect to this game, and it gives a shitload of credibility to Dutch.
This place ain't no such thing as civilized. It's man. So in love with greed, he has forgotten himself and found only appetites.
Dutch's political ideology is... listen, I hate politics. I want to be very fucking clear with you, alright? I love history because then all the politics is, back there where I don't have to touch it. I am a registered centrist. All that being said, Dutch could best be summarized as some sort of anarchist guided loosely by Enlightenment philosophy. He expresses a hatred of the rich and the federal government, and a firm belief that he clearly demonstrates time and time again that all men are created equal. But he takes it much farther than America does. The first man who, having enclosed a piece of ground, bethought himself of saying, "This is mine," and found people simple enough to believe him, was the real founder of civil society. From how many horrors and misfortunes might not anyone have saved mankind by pulling up the stakes, or filling up the ditch, and crying to his fellows, "Beware of listening to this impostor. You are undone if you once forget that the fruits of the earth belong to us all, and the earth itself to nobody." Jean-Jacques Rousseau was one of the most important Enlightenment philosophers. If you remove like 2 syllables from all these fancy-ass words, this could have come right out of Dutch's fucking mouth.
His sugar business is destroying the people of Guarma. This town, Arthur, it's his town. He bought it just to destroy these folks. His sugar, his oil, his law.
Can all men be created equal? If one is born on an estate, he will one day inherit, and the other is born in the streets. I've seen my analytics. Most of my audience is American, and a little over 5% is non-human. I'm guessing there's a 99.9% chance you have absolutely no problem whatsoever with Enlightenment ideals being put into practice and defended by violence. The story takes place during a very hypocritical time in American history. America, even after the Civil War, was still far from living up to its lofty ideals. Richard White wrote of Abraham Lincoln's funeral procession, most organizations in the procession were segregated by race as well as gender, and in a foretaste of the way freedom would be seasoned with inequality, black people marched near the very end of the parade in Washington and Chicago. In New York, the city council tried to prevent them from marching at all. The game takes place smack dab in the middle of what is often called the nadir of American race relations. Reconstruction of the South after the Civil War failed. And while slavery was gone, prejudice and lynchings were worse than ever. But it goes beyond racial inequality. This time is also referred to as the Gilded Age, a time of maddening income inequality and deplorable living conditions. Don't get me wrong, I'm racist, and frankly think kids nowadays are all freeloaders. But the fact is that Dutch is demonstrably and objectively more ideologically consistent than his adversaries. Dutch doesn't magically become wrong as the game goes on, despite being driven to some desperate actions and radicalizing some young American Indians to his benefit. The problem is that he starts losing.
You know, you and me, we're more ghosts than people.
Feudalism and the ideological underpinnings of it failed when science revealed the answer to questions religion couldn't answer, when religious violence was increasing with no sign of it ever slowing down, when the slave trade had grown to such an extent that owning people had become the economic backbone of supposedly virtuous empires. Feudalism was always wrong, and stupid, and contradictory, and we judge our ancestors for that, while we simultaneously believe that all men are born with unalienable rights, and also we are descended from monkeys, who are descended from walking fish, and those walking fish are descended from an ocean goop that got struck by lightning. There is no ideology above reproach and inconsistencies, no nation above greed and hypocrisy. But the greed and hypocrisy and inconsistencies are always accepted when the future looks bright.
How do you rob and kill people pleasantly? We don't, in spite of Dutch's talk.
When progress is being made towards whatever world is trying to be built, and when that world appears a beautiful one. So I may be reaching here, but you know the gang's go-to name they use when hiding their identity? Tacitus Kilgore. Tacitus was a Roman historian who hated the contradictions and hypocrisies inherent to the empire. His most famous quote, which is a speech he attributed to a barbarian king, but Tacitus did definitely make it up, is one you've probably heard. I've seen it thrown around a lot recently. To ravage, to slaughter, to usurp under false titles, the Romans call empire, and where they make a desert, they call it peace. When I talked about the contradictions and hypocrisies inherent to the Enlightenment, and our nation which was founded upon it, when I talked about slavery, and the nadir, and the Gilded Age, you had one of two reactions. Number one, yeah, isn't it incredible we continue to fight for our beliefs, and work towards building a brighter future? Or, number two, yes, this is bullshit. We're founded on bullshit. If your answer was number two, I do pity you.
I still don't believe in nothing.
Not because you're wrong, I really can't say. I am a centrist, remember? But because you remind me of my favorite video game protagonist.
I'm afraid.
And he is having a hard time. It's incredibly difficult to watch a man lose everything he believed in. And I feel like the focus on redemption, which is fair because fucking, causes discussions about this game to focus on the ends and not the means. I find why Arthur changed to be incredibly compelling. His decay is not just physical, it is spiritual. Arthur would have died of TB without making any changes to his behavior whatsoever if the gang's bond, and the moral glue that held it together, did not disintegrate. If the future they wanted still seemed possible.
You know, nothing means more to me than this gang, the bond we share. It's the most real thing to me. I would kill for it, I would happily die for it.
This video has obviously covered a lot of pretty heavy stuff. I fed the script into one of those word cloud generators, and it committed suicide. So let's bring it back down to earth. Let's drop discussion of man's relationship with violence and the ideology which compels it, and the enlightenment and the hypocrisy of turn-of-the-century America. Let's talk about something small, here, at the end of this video that took 10 years off my life, and put me on several lists. Just kidding, go fuck yourself, we're on this ride together. I see a lot of people talking about ending up on the right side of history. I think some people are truly obsessed with that. I envy your madness. You won't, you can't.
My whole life I've been surrounded by fools with moral codes. Here's the moral code. Look out for folks. Stop trying to act like some hero in a book.
What you can do is your best. Your greatest sacrifices may go down as a senseless waste. Your greatest deeds undone by mindless ideologues. Your actions and inactions removed from their context and used to paint you a backwards monster deluded by madmen and hypocrites. To believe in nothing is a spiritual death, and to believe in something so firmly you lose sight of the world around you can cause untold damage. I personally find a lot of Enlightenment-era writings to be very dry. But there is one quote here that I think is a great rule of thumb with matters like these, and something I think that Red Dead Redemption, for all its cynicism, is trying to say. Something Arthur truly embodied by the end. In the words of Immanuel Kant, always recognize that human individuals are ends, and do not use them as means to your end.
I think we're gonna be okay.